Sal. Let's do a little intro today.
What's happening? We are here in Texas. The weather's perfect. Look at the sky. It's great.
Beautiful day here. So let's see, how did you get into beekeeping?
Well, how did I get into beekeeping? That's a very interesting question. So it goes back probably about 6-7 years ago. And one of my good friends, his name is Alan. We were in an office working, and Alan was having a conversation with somebody next door. And of course, I was being nosy. So I was paying attention to what they were talking about. And Alan was bragging about bees and how he's a beekeeper and how fun it is. So after they were done with their meeting, I literally went into his office and I said, hey, so tell me more about beekeeping. And so he did, and I said, oh, that would be really cool. And this was probably July time frame, I'm guessing. And he told me about beekeeping, and I said, I want to do beekeeping. And he looked at me and he said, there's no way you could do it. So then we put a wager on. And I said, I'll bet you a couple $100 that I could do beekeeping. And he said, there's no way you could do it. So I took on that bet. And the next year, he helped me get started with 2 hives. He went to Man Lake, got a couple packages, brought it over to my house, showed me how to put them into, well, let me back up. Came to my house with the bee packages, and he said, okay, this is what it looks like. And I have to be honest, I completely froze. Like, I saw the bees, and I didn't know what to do. And anyways, he said, okay, let's go put them in the hives. So we went out to our backyard. We put one package in, and I saw him do it, and all the bees went flying everywhere, and I got scared. And he said, okay, let's go ahead and have you do it. And I hesitated, and anyways, he said, you could do it, and I did it, and I was hooked.
Wow.
So that's how I started.
Yeah, just like that. So did you ever imagine yourself doing anything like this?
Not on this scale. Not that we're big beekeepers or anything, because there's obviously beekeepers that have thousands and thousands of colonies. We started with 2 colonies, and then the next year it grew to about 6, and then it grew to 8. And about, I'm gonna say 4 years ago, one of my good friends, Mike, invited me to come down to Texas to bring some hives down here, and we had 20 hives, and I was hooked. At that time, I was hooked on beekeeping. And so then we came down here, I brought 20 hives, he brought his hives, some other friends came down with us, and in that spring, going back to Minnesota, I sat down and I put stuff on paper on a spreadsheet, and I did all the numbers, and then I had to go and sweet talk my wife into letting me make more hives. So I put it all on paper, and anyways, 20 hives came back with 150 hives that spring. So that was kind of the jump start.
So what have been some of the biggest challenges since starting?
Oh, the challenges. There's a lot. So the challenges are, first of all, just learning about beekeeping and learning how to keep the hives alive. So there's a lot of challenges. Weather is a big factor. I never thought that weather played a big factor in beekeeping, but weather has a huge part of it. And just knowing all the ins and outs about beekeeping, you'll never stop learning about it. I feel like every year I learn something new. So yeah, I can't say that I've learned one thing or 2 things. I've learned hundreds of things. And every year is different.
Yeah. So through that, what have been some of the biggest rewards that you've gained from beekeeping?
I would say the biggest reward is self-satisfaction. I like to do stuff, and I like to see it succeed. We have other businesses, and we have started with something that's really small and grown it a little bit, to the larger scale. And so for me, every little intricate part of beekeeping is rewarding, because whether it's harvesting the honey and seeing how much you're going to get, whether it's doing splits and seeing if you could get to the number that you want to get to, whether it's learning how to go out to California to do pollination. I didn't know any of that stuff. Whether it's learning how to do queen bees, how to graft and all that. Like, that to me, once I learn how to do that stuff, that's my satisfaction, is knowing that I have learned something different.
So you talked about moving to that larger growth or getting to that larger step. So what plans do you have for future growth, or where can you see your guys' self moving forward?
Well, if money was not an object, which, many people say that if you want to make $1 million in beekeeping, you have to start with 2 million to make $1 million. So beekeeping, it's very expensive. The woodware is the most expensive stuff. And then you start getting into trucking and all that other, syrup and all that. So there's a lot of factors that go into it. So if money was not a factor, obviously we all want to be really big. But to me, the slow growth is where I'm at. But, my target this year was 1,700. This year there was a big colony collapse, and so we're not going to get to those numbers. But, to me, I don't want to put a cap and say, well, I only want to get to 3,000 or I only want to get to 5,000. If we get to 5,000, that's great. If we get to 6,000, that's better. If we get to 7,000, that's even better. So to my wife and I, we never put a limit as to where we want to grow to.
Mm-hmm. What things do you do with your business products?
Well, we started by selling honey, jar at a time to friends and families. And then as we produce more honey, then it's like, okay, well, selling one jar at a time is not the easiest thing. So we started selling to packers. So packers are people who buy bulk honey and then they package it under either their name or somebody else's name. So we sell it to packers on a wholesale. My wife started doing lip balm, which that's another revenue, so let me just back up. In beekeeping, there's multiple revenues or streams of revenue that you could do. So whether it's honey wholesaling, whether it's honey that you're retailing, there is wax that you end up getting from when you harvest the honey, and then you could go ahead and process that wax and sell it. So that's another source of revenue. There is lip balm that you could do. So my wife started doing that. We have a house that has its own little separate kitchen. And every so often she's in there, and I call her my little mad scientist because she goes in there and there's beakers and all kinds of stuff going on. And I'm like, what are you doing now? So there's lip balm. There's something that I have a tongue twister time thing. It's called a body butter. And I don't know, I guess you lather yourself with it. I have no idea what you do. But anyway, so there's body butter. There you go. And then there's, I don't know, she's going to try to do some hair gel because she doesn't like my stuff that I use in my hair. So she said she's going to do some hair thing. So again, she's going to be the mad scientist to go do that. She does candles. So yeah, so you can do all kinds of stuff with the byproduct of bees. So you're not just locked into honey. There's all kinds of byproducts that you have.
And what is a lesson that you would say you've learned throughout beekeeping?
Many lessons. Some of them are, don't be in such a hurry because the weather is going to change on you in a hurry. Don't think that next year you're going to be bigger because Mother Nature is going to have a different plan for you. Don't think that you're going to have a good honey crop every year because that's not going to happen. So learning to adapt. So we were in the military, and one of the sayings is adapt and overcome. So we adapt to whatever the situation is, and we try to overcome it. That's the way we go about that.
Any final thoughts or comments that you'd like to make?
Well, I have a question for you.
Oh, yes.
So, by the way, this is Lydia, and she is down here in Texas helping us. And you're new to beekeeping, so let me ask you. You didn't know anything about beekeeping prior to this week, and I asked you if you could come down and help us do splits and all that. What is your thoughts so far about this whole the experience.
Yeah, it was interesting. I didn't even know what you meant by splits, and it was like my first time ever being surrounded by like all the bees. And at first it's a little frightening, you know, hearing all the buzzing, and I like started having like dreams of like the buzzing, and it's been really fun though. But I think the coolest thing has been like finding the joy in like the little things, like lifting up a frame and having a full honey and then having like a full brood. And it's just been cool to just, I don't know, see the whole process of the splitting.
Yeah.
And yeah, like it's fun. Like we found like the queen on a few frames. So just all like the little things have been exciting. So it's been a cool experience.
So you enjoy it so far?
Yeah, I've enjoyed it.
All right. So that feeling that you just had is kind of what I had when I first started, because it was all these new things and you're like, oh, that's pretty cool. So like that's one of the rewards that I get out of it is doing that. So, you know, I don't know. I mean, beekeeping has taught me a lot. And so, you know, bringing people over to help us, whether it's doing splits or harvest or any of that, and seeing that same joy that you just explained right now is even more satisfying than anything else, because you know, we all sit there and we're like, oh, you know, we go to the store and we buy a bottle of honey and we're eating it, but we really don't know how that honey is produced until you get right into the nitty gritty and you find out how it is.
I feel like you can appreciate it more too then.
Absolutely,
yeah.
right? So we have my son sometimes helps us. Ethan is out here too, and my wife gave him a nickname this trip. He is called Pooh Bear. So now I just refer to him as Pooh Bear because one is he loves sweets. So the first thing he did when we started doing splits was, hey Dad, can you find me a frame that I could just eat the honey with? And I could just see Pooh Bear in the movie, you know, just blah, 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 blah. But, you know, the funny part is that I let him borrow my truck to drive around my personal truck. And my wife got into my truck to go somewhere, and she's like, have you been in your truck? And I said, no, why? And she said, Winnie the Pooh has been in there. It's all full of honey everywhere. So that is the cool part is to, you know, experience this with everybody, just bringing them in and showing them what it's like and you know, being the little homesteader. So I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Yeah, it does. Well, I think that's all the questions I have for today.
Cool. Well, thank you very much. And from Texas, we'll see you next time.